I've been a fan of your website for years. I love to read the new and upcoming stories that have been published to your page, as well as the old ones. I used to not really believe in ghosts, like many, until I began encountering them myself. My first experience was when I was right out of high school, and I was working at a bed and breakfast. I sent in that story when it happened. I've since graduated from college and am now teaching in a quaint town called Woolmarket in Mississippi. The school has been registered as being the oldest in Mississippi, as well as one of the oldest in the United States. In the 1800s, the community was the center of the wool trade, hence the name Woolmarket. Eventually, a school was built in 1910 by the people of the community to help educate their children. It still stands and currently has about 300 students post-Hurricane Katrina. Well, 300 students we can actually see. We are not sure how many attend after hours. The faculty and staff just know it is more than one. This is my second year teaching, and I absolutely love it. The faculty are close, and some of us even stay after school on Wednesdays to do lesson plans together. I was told upon being hired that it isn't the safest place to be after hours, but I didn't realize what they even meant until I started staying late to do lessons. The teacher I worked with started telling me stories of when she used to have a classroom in the main building. She said she used to come real early in the morning to get things set up in her room before the children came, and she would hear children laughing and giggling in the hallway, but she was the only one at school. She said the intercom would come on in her class, and she would hear little children whispering through the system, but when she walked up to the office, it was locked. When I was hired on, the lead teacher told me she never sits at the school alone for the same reasons. Well, doing the lessons at school was just a lot easier for me than dragging all the books home and doing them, so my teacher friend and I began doing them together to make the time go quicker. Usually when everyone had left for the day and we had settled into our seats for a good while, is when we began hearing strange noises. The door to the main building would open and shut by itself, and we knew no one was there. We would hear little children giggling and running down the hall. The intercom would come on in different classrooms down the hall, and we could hear a voice that was not familiar. We began hearing what sounded like adult voices telling students to be quiet in the hallway. Last, but not least, desks would be heard moving and being arranged in different rooms, including the one I taught in. I would walk in, and my desk would be rearranged from the day before. When we would leave the school at night, sometimes after dark, we would see lights flicker on and off in the main building. Soon, things began missing. My lesson plans that I would have placed on my desk to be turned in the following morning would show up in a strange place I know I did not put them, or never be found. Then, when I began taking my printed copy home, my lesson plans on the computer screen would go in a sort of landscape mode, if you will, and would print out where the words would go off the page. There was no way to unlandscape the screen for them to print out correctly. My principal thought it was a joke and told me to fix it, but when I showed her that it wasn't setting on the computer that was causing it, she realized I wasn't kidding. When I started talking to the students and telling them how much I enjoyed them being there, my computer screen formatted my lessons back to its original setting, and I never had that problem again. But as for the giggling, desk moving, and the door slamming, it continues. In fact, while I was teaching last week, I think that one of the students from the past wanted to sit in on my lesson. The door was shut, and it just opened completely by itself, and shut by itself, and a piece of paper flew out on an empty desk up front. The students seemed to feel a chill in the air, and then it was gone. The door opened again, by itself, and closed by itself. My first graders call him Casper, and don't really mind if he pays another visit. My principal says she has encountered similar occurrences in the school, as she too refuses to stay at the school alone. She claims the police officer at night refuses to go by the north wing of the school where my classroom and several others are located because he sees strange things. Many teachers feel that there are students who died while they were attending Wool Market. Others feel that they are students who attended the school when it was an agricultural school in the 1800s. Whomever they are, they make themselves known to many who attend the school now. We are not afraid of them, but the thought that they exist is kind of creepy. After renting a house in Longview, Washington, my grandmother informed me that their very close friends owned the house before I was born, and that they went there quite often. On occasion, while watching TV in the living room, I would see a man in a brown suit walking down the hallway out of the corner of my eye. When I looked directly that way, he would disappear. On my 12th birthday, my sister-in-law had got me a black balloon with a tombstone on front of it with a saying, "R.I.P. Youth." About a week later, I had just finished barbecuing some steaks and was sitting down to watch the Seahawks play a Monday night football game. With no wind to propel it, the balloon came around the corner from the kitchen into the living room. It stopped halfway into the living room and went back into the hallway towards the bedroom that the man in the brown seemed to be heading to. Halfway down the hall, it stopped, reversed direction, and came back into the living room where I attacked it with a steak knife. After draining all the helium from it, I threw it away. Our daughter would not sleep in the bedroom that the man appeared to be heading to, saying she felt his presence and was frightened. We changed bedrooms with her, but I had no feeling of his presence there myself. I saw this apparition on numerous occasions, but never felt any dread associated with it. When I described the estimated height and attire of this apparition to my grandmother, she said it sounded like their friend George. I never saw his wife, and according to my grandmother, they were childless. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I witnessed something that I'll never forget to this day. Every night before I went to bed, my dad always left the bathroom light on so that he wouldn't trip or stumble on anything trying to get to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I knew that the bathroom light was on before I closed my eyes. Usually, if my dad forgot to turn it on, I would do it myself. The light from the bathroom always shined directly into my room, and I would have my door cracked open so that the light would not be directly in my face. I'm not sure what time it was when I woke up, but all I know is that every light in the house is off, including the bathroom, and my door was open all the way. I was lying on my side, looking towards the door, and that's when I saw a black figure standing in the doorframe. It looked like it was leaning on the side of the doorframe just looking at me. I could not see the face or what kind of clothes it had on. It was tall and slender. It did look like it was wearing a hat as well. It did not move 1 inch. The house was dark, but this figure was even darker than the room. I could see the shape of the shoulders and the neck, and I knew it was tall because the top of the head was close to the top of the doorway. I was scared, and at first, I wanted to get up and turn the light on. The light switch was next to the figure standing in the doorway, so I thought I'd see if maybe it was my dad or my brother playing a joke on me and call out their name. There was no answer. I knew that it couldn't have been them, because my dad and my brother are not walking around the house in the dark. They are pretty jumpy when it comes to haunted houses and going into dark rooms. Instantly, I had the uncomfortable and frightened feeling inside of me, and I laid down in my bed, then threw the covers over my head. I began to pray to myself like my mom had taught me. I waited about 10 minutes, then took the blankets off my head. It was gone. I jumped out of bed and ran to turn the light on. Then I looked down the hallway and in the bathroom. I turned on the bathroom light before I went back to my bedroom. The next morning, I asked my dad if he was standing in the doorway last night, and he said no. I also asked my brother if he was there, and he said no. I'm not sure what it was or what it wanted that night, but to this day, I have problems sleeping with all the lights off or going into the dark room to turn a light on. I have many stories from my childhood encounters with the supernatural, which I might share at a later date, but for now, I would like to tell you of my current home and the spirit which resides in it. The home used to belong to an older couple, who, as I've been told by neighbors, were pretty much forgotten about by their own grown-up children. They had both passed away of old age, and of course, the home and almost all of their belongings went up for sale. My husband purchased the home, and we moved in. Since the birth of our children, now 6 and 4, the kids and I have come to find out there is another person living in the home as well. It started when I was pregnant with my son. I would awake at night to find my daughter sitting up in bed, playing with a toy that I knew she didn't have in her crib when I laid her down for the night. I assumed my husband was giving her these toys off the floor when he would get home from working second shift. I asked him about it, and he assured me he was not even walking into her room, let alone having her toys in the middle of the night. I started to watch her during her naps, just to see if she had found a way to climb out of her crib and back in again. I never once saw her climb out, or into it, for that matter. When my son was born, we moved him into the room with our daughter. It's only a 2-bedroom home. As my son grew older, we heard very little from our resident ghost. One night, I'd just gone to bed and was just about to drift off when I saw someone dart down the hall to my children's room. I got up and peeked in, but there was no one there and all was quiet, so I went back to bed. I laid back down under the covers and closed my eyes, and right next to my ear, I hear an older woman's voice rather loudly say, "I can't breathe." For some reason, I thought of my son in that moment. Well, I jumped to my feet and ran to the kids' room. My son was breathing, but it was very struggled. I called my neighbor to come sit with my daughter and called my husband at work while en route to the emergency room. It turns out that my son had allergies to eggs, which I had never realized, and I had made omelets that evening for dinner. Since then, the visits to my kids are almost nightly. They love to hear me tell stories about the ghost we have come to call Granny Ghost. When they go to bed at night, they say their prayers. In thought prayers, they ask for Granny Ghost to watch over them and keep them safe always. I must admit, I hope she stays around too. My son may not be here today if it wasn't for her. She is welcome to stay with us as long as she likes. That is my story. Thank you for taking the time to read it. I would like to submit the following, based on personal experience, since we, or myself, have lived in these homes. Palmer, Massachusetts. This home was owned by my husband since its construction in 1927. Deceased family members often made their presence known by pushing us, whispering, talking out loud, and showing themselves in partial form. Bagpipe music was heard in the basement of the home. My husband's deceased grandfather. Tiny shadows dancing on a bedroom ceiling were witnessed. A dark shape flying through the basement on one occasion was seen by my husband. And in Oxford, Massachusetts, I owned this home with my late ex-husband. He loved the house so much that he swore he would never sell it during his lifetime. Soon after his death in 2001, his voice had been heard by a neighbor calling out to her in a happy greeting. A fleeting glimpse of him had been seen through the kitchen and living room windows. The house was sold at an auction in 2002. No word on whether or not his spirit has been seen since. Dudley, Massachusetts. Built in 1839, this home has been the scene of many hauntings, witnessed by both the former owner of the home and myself, as I had rented the house in 1983 for 6 months. A baby who had died in an unused upstairs bedroom could often be heard crying. The baby would pull blankets off of a bed in another upstairs room. The creaking sounds of a rocking chair could be heard from the dead baby's bedroom. The images of 4 men could be seen in the basement. Voices were often heard from the basement. A white image was once seen, streaking from the kitchen into the bathroom wall, which was formerly a pantry. Many cold spots were felt even in the hottest summer months. Some people who entered the home usually felt a feeling of uneasiness, like they shouldn't be there. Footsteps were often heard, the sound of a dragging foot. I later learned this was the ghost of a former owner who had suffered a leg injury during the Civil War. The home was sold in the summer of 1983 to owners who claimed they've never experienced any hauntings, but the house mysteriously went up for sale months after they had purchased it. Springfield, Massachusetts. My husband lived in this opulent home as a child in the 1960s. The entire family witnessed spirits of a soldier who had lived in the home before dying during the war. Fatal wounds could be seen on his body when he thought nobody was looking at him, but if someone caught sight of him and gave him their attention, the bloody wounds would disappear. Other sightings included a former groundskeeper, a small bright dancing light that may have been the spirit of a dead infant, and the ominous form of an elderly woman who would glare at living family members. A room on the unused 3rd floor of the home that held the remains of a wooden bed, and iron rings into the posts of the bed, possibly keeping a hidden family member who had been insane or mentally disturbed. My husband's family members described disturbing feelings if they entered this room, as if a satanic spirit dwelled there. After my husband's family moved from the home burned to the ground. A chain-link fence was constructed around the vacant house lot, and nothing was rebuilt in its place as of 2002. I actually just remembered a story. I guess I blocked it out because it scared me, and it was so long ago, and I've added a couple of legends from around here. When I was in middle school, I would stay with my friend a lot. She was all into ghosts, witchcraft, and all that. She lived in the country, way out. One night she told me a story about an old house up in the mountains, that a family used to live there, and one day, their children, boy and girl, were left unattended. The girl had an apple and a sharp knife, so she could cut it. They began running around, and the little girl flipped over the couch, and well, you can come to the conclusion it wasn't good. She fell on a knife and bled to death on the couch. My friend told me the couch was up there still, and what she had experienced on trips up there. Well, being that it was so late there was no way I was walking up a dirt road on a mountain up to a haunted house. So the next day we started walking up there. We passed an old barn that was just spooky. You know how you can just look at a house or structure and get a bad feeling from it? So we continued up to the house, but we never made it in. As soon as the house came into view, I saw something in the upstairs window. I just brushed it off though, because I never experienced anything. We got up to the porch and could hear children laughing, and as soon as you got to the door, the laughter stopped, and a little girl's voice said, "Mommy." After that, I took the hint and took off running, leaving my friend behind. Well, it also had been raining earlier that day, so needless to say, the road was muddy, but you can bet I was running so fast that I slid on my side most of the way back down the road. So even though I'm interested in hauntings and historical sites, I will never go again unless I'm with a group. Out of that experience, all I got was a muddy side and sore leg, and scared half to death. I guess the little girl was wondering if it was her mother returning home, since she never saw her mother again after the accident. Another time I was at my cousin's sleepover birthday party, which he had in their basement apartment. So being like she is, she had a Ouija board. I know that Ouija boards are really only games, but this is what happened. I wouldn't play with it. Surprised? I think not. Anyway, I was sitting on the couch watching a few others play with it. There was a remote on the counter on the other side of the room, and all of a sudden, it was like someone had just pushed it off the counter in a range because it went flying all the way across the room. No one was near it at all. So later, when we were all trying to get to sleep, we had about 3 portable heaters because we were in the basement. Even with the heaters on full blast and all of us girls in the room, the more people, more body heat, warmer room. The room was ice cold. So needless to say, I didn't get any sleep because it was too cold for comfort. There are only a couple of haunted places around here. There's the tunnel to nowhere. When the construction workers were working on it, it collapsed and killed many. If you go at night, and you have the nerve to go into the tunnel, pitch black, can't even see your hand in front of you. As you go deeper into the tunnel, if you have a flashlight, count on it going out, and also count on your breathing getting harder too, as you go further. Sure, there are explanations, but this is the story behind it that makes you want to believe it's something else. Then, there's Helen's Bridge. I'm not sure of the true story behind Helen, but all the ones that I've heard can be summed up like this. Something happened to Helen's baby. She jumped off the unfinished bridge to her sad ending. If you venture onto the bridge, which is closed to the public now, you have to walk quite a way. If you walk towards the edge of the bridge and say, "Helen, I got your baby," she appears and tries to harm you if you're dumb enough to stick around. Another thing I experienced really did give me the creeps. Me and a bunch of friends were just out for a ride. They told me about the cemetery that is haunted. If you go through it at night, your car supposedly turns around and cuts off. Me being the chicken I am, I said forget that. Well, they tricked me. They took me into the cemetery another way. As soon as I realized it was the cemetery, I started freaking out and put the car into reverse before I ventured further into the cemetery. Even though I put the car in reverse, when I pushed on the gas, I wouldn't move. It had been put into neutral. So I tried again. Stepped on the gas, went forward, then put into drive. Well then, I tried once more, and it went right back into neutral. No one was pushing the gear shift. None of them even know how to drive a stick. So finally, and luckily, because by this time I was pretty freaked, it stayed in reverse, and I went home and stayed shook up about it for most of the night. Even though I didn't see anything, something was trying to force me to enter. My name is Joe, and this is my most recent encounter. At least I feel it is an encounter. I'm 33, have a very open mind to these such things, and do try to look at both sides of the story before I go telling my family. I also consider myself to be on the sensitive side of those feelings, as in being watched, hair standing up, those types of feelings. It was about 2 years ago. My ex-girlfriend and I just rented a new place in Malden, Massachusetts. It was very nice and not too old looking. 2 floors and a done-over attic with 2 bedrooms up there. There was a very nicely done master bedroom directly under one of the rooms. That room had a storage space not finished. The creepy event started on the night that our new furniture was delivered. I was meeting the delivery guys. I received the new goods and proceeded to start putting together the dining room table and was alone that night. Suddenly, and I do stress suddenly, I got this eerie feeling I was being watched. A feeling that was full of dread and despair. It was ridiculously unnerving. I did have the radio on, so it wasn't dead silent, but that didn't matter. I tried to shake it off by singing, just so I could get my mind off of that feeling. Trying to comfort myself by saying that it's just because you're in a different place. You haven't got comfortable in your new surroundings yet. It wasn't working. Those feelings were getting stronger. Now mind you, I'm putting this table together in the living room, and that feeling was coming from behind me, from on the stairs. It's as if someone sits on the stairs and pokes their head through the dowels, sort of like they're in jail. As hard as it was, that feeling wasn't going away. So what did I do? I got up off my knees, looked at my watch, and repeatedly told myself, it's getting late. I said that's enough for tonight, trying to kid myself, and left pretty quickly. I didn't say anything to my girlfriend about this since I just thought it was me. So I'm a night owl, and I love watching the TV late into the night. My girlfriend is dead asleep and is next to me in bed. It's around 1:30 a.m. when I start hearing a banging. Not banging like a pounding, but a banging, like stomping noises. These sounds were coming from my daughter's room above us, and she was staying at her grandmother's house that night. I mute the TV and cock my head to focus my hearing, and then it stops. I quickly dismiss it and then unmute the TV. No sooner I do that, that stomping comes back again. Now I'm getting a little nervous, because in the other room up there is her son. He's 5 and fell asleep hours ago. I shut the TV off, put a pillow over my head, and go to sleep, all the while wondering what the heck that was. But it did stop, and nothing else happened that night. Now mind you, this was only a couple span of days, one weeknight. And oh, by the way, we had a mini chihuahua. I was going in the basement to do laundry and the basement wasn't finished, but it was still nice and had small box windows at about the outside grass level, and the dog was following me. At about the time I got to the 3rd step down, I noticed he was still at the threshold of the entranceway refusing to come down. I called, and I said, come on. He whined and fled back upstairs. I started to do the laundry, and it starts again. Hairs on my neck stand straight up. Goosebumps start appearing on my arms, and the feeling of not being alone floods my body. My fight or flight alarms are going off, and my nerves are starting to get shaky at best. It's not like it felt like a presence was right behind me. It was more towards the other side of the room, as if something was just hanging around. Being curious, I finished putting the laundry in the washing machine and started to go upstairs. I then start getting a sense of relief. Now this could be my own mind playing tricks on me. But as I got to the top step, I felt it again, but this time, it was like it was watching me from the bottom step, just looking up at me as I left. When I got through the door, I felt fine, and nothing really else happened the rest of the night. Up until now, this whole experience was a little unsettling, but nothing major. One night, however, at about 2 or so in the morning, I was playing a computer game. My ex was asleep once again. The computer room was small, about 6 by 6 feet, and it had a doorway, but no door. The computer faces the back wall, so when you sit by the computer, your back is to the very short hallway and stairs. So if you turn around, you can see both very easily. Anyway, I'm playing and feeling comfortable when all of a sudden, the stairs creak. I thought it was just the stairs being stairs, making settling noises and the like, and then again I hear one more creak. Now, the daughter, and she was home this time, was known for trying to sneak down the stairs at night and watch TV. This second time I thought it was her and I turned around, but no one was there. You hear one creak, you can easily dismiss it, but two? That's when the nervous thoughts start to creep in. Suddenly, they stop. No more creaks as I started to relax and continue to play. All of a sudden the room, even though small, had an open air about it, so if you sit at the computer, you could just feel that there was no door, and hence open. I felt as if there was someone standing in the doorway, and making me feel closed in, casually standing there, and watching me. I could feel eyes upon me. I didn't dare myself to turn around, so I look in the moment. Nothing. The thing was, it must have gotten closer, because very quickly, the hair stood up again. I started getting chills, and I felt a cold and tingling sensation. I then felt as if there was slight pressure on my right shoulder, as if a hand was being placed on it. Very subtle and slight coldness. It felt very much like someone was behind me and looking over my shoulder. This freaked me out so much that I shut the game down very quickly and went to bed, like a 5-year-old who's afraid of thunderstorms. The next day, I decided it was time to say something to my girlfriend. I told her what happened, and she looked at me like I had 10 heads, but still had the look of belief and disbelief. I asked her if she's ever felt any of these feelings that I've had, and her response was no. We went outside to have a cigarette, and the landlord, Dave, pulls into the driveway. We give him a cheery hi and she blurts it out. Joe thinks we have ghosts. I gave her a look of disgust and he starts in, laughs a little, jokes with me, and says, "So we do, huh?" I tell him about what's been happening to me, and I asked if he's ever felt anything. His response is no. This house is Dave's first rental property, and only the second to live in here, as opposed to the original owners. I asked him if he knows anything that has happened in this home, even the age of it, and he said I don't know. He did say it was kinda dated, but he never specified the exact age of this place. Well, to say the least, I never got to find out any more about what it was, because we broke up, and to this day, I'm still convinced that something is in here. Like the video, comment the video, tell me what you like, and repeat the process. Everybody, repeat the process. Like the video, share the video, I forgot the lyrics already, it's my own song that I meant. Anyway guys, please like the video and share, subscribe if you're new. Let's get to 30K. Anyway guys, love you and good night.